everybody, and welcome to another episode of Public Opinion with your hosts, Pam and Vanetta. And Vanetta and I are not together, but we are still together in spirit. And we are excited to have you all back for another episode. We have a very special guest host with us this week, and that is Judy JJ Winston. And Judy is a licensed independent social worker. She's an attorney, and she is currently a magistrate judge in family court. She's the author of 2 novels as well as a nonfiction workbook. And so welcome, Judy.
Hi, it's so good to see you guys. Thank you for having me.
Well,
I'm loving this. Want to be a host with y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
All right,
well, we try to be the hostesses with the mostest. And you do have 2 books, and I've read both of them. And they touch on the subjects of mental health and incest and human trafficking and sickle cell as well. And so that's the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, is because I wanted you to talk about sickle cell awareness, tell us the differences between sickle cell disease, sickle cell anemia. And I know that September was Sickle Cell Awareness Month, but we were on hiatus during September. But I'm not a person that really subscribes to all of those different months for things. I think any month is a good month to learn about something. And don't you think so, Vanetta, as well?
I totally agree with that. The opportunity, whenever you can have it, let's take advantage of it.
Exactly. Exactly. And so that's the reason why I wanted to have you on the show, Judy, and also to serve as our special guest host, because you have a lot of knowledge about sickle cell because your daughter lives with sickle cell disease. Is that right?
That's true. And also my dad died of sickle cell disease when I was 8 years old. My grandmother died when my father was young from sickle cell disease. I have an uncle. They also passed away from sickle cell disease. And additionally, I have a niece, a great niece, and a great nephew, along with my daughter living with sickle cell disease. So when I wrote my second novel, I really wanted to raise awareness and use my fiction novel as a way to do that. In particular, since, I got to make my jokes. When I first started dating my husband and he took me to that 5-star restaurant, you got to get that 5-star experience on that date. I asked him, did he have sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease? And he said no, because he was completely unaware that he was a carrier. Okay. And also for me, I didn't know that there were all these different types of sickle cell diseases, because my grandmother and my father and my aunts and uncle, they had sickle cell anemia. My daughter has a disease called hemoglobin SC. I had never heard of it before.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's good. And that's what we're going to be talking about on this show. And not only are you going to talk about it, but we also have 2 other participants who are going to be on this show. One is your daughter that you're speaking of. So we're going to be asking her about what it's like to live with the disease. And then we also have another participant who is going to talk about sickle cell. So we're going to get started and meet our participants. First, we have Adrienne Kincaid. Adrienne is the founder and executive director of Kincaid's Kindred Spirits Incorporated. And then we have Jasmine Jackson Winston. And Jasmine is a senior biochemistry major at Ohio State University, and she is living with sickle cell disease. So let's welcome our participants. So welcome participants, Adrienne, as well as Jasmine. Thank you so very much for agreeing to be participants on the show and for bringing knowledge to us about sickle cell disease as well as sickle cell anemia and what it's like to live with it. So what we always do on this show, and it wouldn't be public opinion without us asking the public opinion question of the week. So I'm going to show you all the public opinion question. How has sickle cell affected our communities, and what forms of awareness and services are available and or needed? So Adrian,
Yes.
I'm going to let you start and tell us the answer to that question. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for allowing me to be on this forum to speak about sickle cell. And to me, and this is my opinion, sickle cell has affected the community, individuals in this community financially, because when a child go through the illness, it not only affects the child, it affects the parents, and then the parents can't work. And then when they lose their job, they lose their income, they lose sometimes their place to stay. So it impacts the community in a financial way. We're also looked at as being the problem to the opioid epidemic when we're actually not. We're not the cause of it. And with the financial piece, sometimes parents go into bankruptcy because the cost of taking care of a child with sickle cell is so astronomical. It's unbelievable. So I was fortunate to have both of my parents, and they had very good jobs, and that never really affected us as a family. So yeah, that's how it impacts the community. And then you want to raise them up, your child up in a home where the environment is safe, where the environment is clean and quiet, but sometimes you can't because of the amount of money that you make. So you have to take what you can get and live where you can afford. So to me, that's how it impacts the community.
Okay. And now, Judy, you want to answer that as well?
I'm gonna echo everything that Adrian just said. I'm fortunate enough to have a pretty decent job. Sometimes, I look at I have Medical Mutual, and I look at those statements, and it's like some months it's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month that they paid for Jasmine's treatment. And the co-pays are very astronomical. And it just makes you really concerned. And additionally, what my daughter has gone through in respect to how she is sometimes treated when she ends up in the hospital is unconscionable. What Adrian said about the opioid epidemic, it is not our children and our constituency who's having an issue with opioids. How do I know? Because I came from the Adams Board, where I worked for 19 years. I've seen so many people abuse opiate medication. I never had any sickle cell patients that were calling me. I never had any sickle cell patients that were being identified, except for by the hospital when they felt that they were overusing the services, and then they would want us to put them through detox, which is not something that would be indicated medically. Why would I put somebody through detox for opioids and then when they get sick, give them opioids? It makes no sense, okay? And I would have to explain that to the doctors that would call. But it really is a problem. And it's something that needs to be, we need to raise awareness about it because it's unacceptable to have our children and our constituency being treated like criminals when they are, there to be treated. It's just not acceptable to me.
Can you please tell our audience or inform our audience, first of all, what is sickle cell disease and what is sickle cell anemia?
Jasmine will tell you because she's the biochemistry major.
Oh,
She's
right.
like,
Well, you know what?
Okay, let Jazz do
We are
it.
going to have Jasmine give us that answer. Then go ahead, Jasmine.
Okay,
Jasmine's
so
like, I'll answer it. I'll answer it.
Right.
sickle cell, it's a hereditary blood disorder that affects people, usually people who are descendants from like Africa or places that have a very high malaria count, which happens to be around like the Mediterranean, Caribbean areas. So it's a hereditary blood disorder that changes the shape of your red blood cells. So instead of your red blood cells being circular and round like, a donut shaped, it's shaped like crescent moons or sickles. And so what happens is that the blood cells, they're really rigid. They get stuck on each other because they're that shape. when they go through blood vessels, they get stuck inside the blood vessel wall, which kind of forms like a clot like experience happening, which is called a sickle cell crisis. When that happens, you can have pain, you have fatigue, you have jaundice, which is yellowing of the eyes and skin. Basically your body is just not getting the oxygen that it needs. So that can cause like joint pain, a lot of pain in your extremities, and you can have things like stroke, death. It can be very detrimental. Yeah, and really it just is from the abnormal hemoglobin inside of the blood cell.
And is that with the sickle cell disease as well as the sickle cell anemia?
Okay, so sickle cell disease is like an umbrella term. That just means any type of like abnormal hemoglobin. So in biochemistry, we learned that sickle cell disease comes from the hemoglobin beta, hemoglobin beta mutation.
Right.
So sickle cell disease is an umbrella term. So sickle cell anemia, it is categorized by SS genotype. This means that, anemia is one of the most common and one of the most severe types of sickle cell. So I have hemoglobin SC, which is another form of sickle cell. It just means you have one S mutation and one C mutation. So again, sickle cell disease is just when you have any type of abnormal hemoglobin. Regular hemoglobin is A. So anything that's not A is considered sickle cell. So hemoglobin SC, I have one S and one C. Beta plus thalassemia and beta zero thalassemia are two other forms of sickle cell that have abnormal hemoglobin. Beta plus, I'm pretty sure is more milder, as is hemoglobin SC like mine. It can be more milder. It doesn't have to be. Beta zero is more severe, like sickle cell anemia. So in terms of the symptoms, it can vary from person to person, from region, all those different types of things. I know us women have more problems in terms of when you have your menstrual cycle, when you're pregnant, hormones, things can cause different symptoms and pain. So the amount of pain, the amount of symptoms that you have varies from person.
It just varies. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and thank you so very much
That was
for
excellent.
that.
You explained that extremely well.
Well, she's a biochemistry major. Okay.
Okay, she'll be my doctor one day.
Okay. I'm so very proud. But she did. She gave an excellent definition of that. Okay. So now I am going to circle back to you, Adrienne. Okay. And you are the executive director of Kindred Spirits.
Kincaid's Kindred Spirits.
Kincaid's Kindred Spirits. So what exactly does your organization do, and what services do you offer?
We are a community outreach, adult support, and youth mentoring group. And what we do is we go within the community and do information tables, health fairs to try to get people educated on what sickle cell is, because usually when we do a health fair, people will come up and say, well, I thought they cured sickle cell. And we're like, no, it's not cured. And we do adult support. We have monthly support group meetings. We normally have events throughout the year. We usually have a bowling fundraiser. We usually have a walk, a cookout, and our annual red and white semi-formal dinner. And then what we do with the youth, we wanted to have like a youth mentoring to connect an adult individual with a youth individual to be like a buddy system. So they know that they can always call somebody if they have issues or concerns, but that never really got off the ground. But what it is most of the time, the parents will call me and I'll go over to their house and I'll sit with the parent and the child and let the parent know some of the things to look for, what to expect as the child get older. Because sometimes your crisis will come in segments. You could be sick all your teens, and then your 20s, you'll be okay. And then your 30s, you'll be messed up. And then your 40s, you'll be okay. So it just, to me, and for me, it comes in waves. Now I have
Judy, I'm sorry. Now, Judy, when did you find out that Jasmine had sickle cell? When was she tested?
I knew before she was born because I had amnio. My husband is an identical twin. So that's the first time I even had any, maybe an inkling, because my niece was born with hemoglobin C trait. And I had no idea what that was, and so they said, oh, they said something about it could be a sickle cell trait. So they tested my husband. They thought he had an S like me. I have an S gene. And so they never even told us anything about hemoglobin SC. So when I found out, because I wanted a girl really bad, so God did bless me. When I found out that I was gonna have a daughter, they called me and said, we have good news and bad news. That's what the amnio doctor said. And I said, okay. He says, what do you want first? And Pam, you know me, I'm positive. I want the good news first. He said, your daughter doesn't have sickle cell anemia. I said, thank God. I said, well, then what's the bad news? He said, she has hemoglobin SC. I said, well, what's that? Okay.
Right. How is that?
Look,
good
I don't
and
know
how is
anything
that
about
bad?
that. He said, I can't tell you that. You're going to have to talk to somebody else. He
Wow.
said, I didn't even know that it was a
Yeah.
possibility.
And see, that's the
So,
thing. So many people don't know about sickle cell. It's like you hear about it, and like you said, Adrian, some people think that that was cured. They're like, out. People still have sickle cell. But
You don't hear a lot about it anymore. I can say when I was in college, I knew more about it than today. I mean, I knew people who had sickle
right.
cell anemia.
Yeah, and then I used to hear that people didn't have a long lifespan who had it. Like you only lived like maybe till your 30s. But I guess people are living longer now. Is that right?
I'll be 60 next year.
yeah, you
Had the
look
latest.
awesome,
That's a long.
Adrian.
That's a
Thank you.
long
You look
life.
good, girl.
Yeah. Now, Jasmine, you want to tell us what is it like to live with this disease, and do you suffer with the crises? And how often do you get those?
So to live with it, it's both a little bit frustrating, but also it kind of gives me some courage and strength, and it gives me a reason to keep fighting every day. In terms of like the crises, when I was a little bit younger, so like before I hit puberty, before the age of 13, I was like rarely ever sick. I was pretty healthy. Um, I think when I turned 13 and right when puberty started to hit was when my crises pain started getting more frequent. Now, I'm not gonna say I'm sick all the time. I do suffer with a lot more symptoms than I ever really have, which causes me to be in the hospital a lot more. And usually I can just go to the sickle cell clinic or ER and be in there for a few hours and go home. Sometimes I have to go back a few days in a row. I rarely ever get hospitalized that much simply because my hemoglobin is really high. And a lot of the times my blood work looks good, so I don't have to be in the hospital, but I do have pain, so I do have to go to the hospital when I have uncontrolled pain that my pain meds aren't fixing. Um, but as a student, it can be frustrating because when I don't feel well, I can't go out and hang out with my friends. I'm turning 22 on Monday, and so that kind of sucks when you're allowed to drink and you can't go drink with your friends because you feel well.
Yeah.
Of studying, it's really difficult to be amped up on Dilaudid and oxycodone and then have to study for biochemistry 3 test and organic chemistry test. It's really
Right.
frustrating. And also being in the hospital, I have to miss lectures sometimes. That can be a problem. So it's definitely important that, I got in contact with my school's disability service. So I was able to have extended time on tests, to have extra time to complete assignments when I am sick. But also I know that, if I'm suffering the way I am, that other people are suffering too, and I want to help them, and I want to be a hematologist. So therefore, I do the best I can to attend classes and get the best grades I can, and have people, my peers, help me, even when I don't feel well. So I mean, there's pros and cons to everything, right?
So now, Adrian, when you were mentioning about the opioid crisis and how there has been some blame on people who have sickle cell, what were you referring to? Is it because of the pain that is that people suffer who have sickle cell, and perhaps they turn to opioids, or what is it that would make them think that that was even something that could propel the opioid crisis?
Because most of the time, that's the only thing that really would ease the pain is opioids, and they start off giving them to you at a young age.
Okay.
So as you get older, your body kind of like get conditioned to a certain amount. And then as you get older, you're going to need a little more to maintain the pain, and the pain becomes different as you get older and more intense. So when we go into the ER, they feel like we're just coming in to get a high.
Okay.
But why would that be when we got a prescription
Right.
at home? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
Like
And see, I
Jasmine
never
said.
knew that. I never knew that that people were being blamed for that, or they didn't think that you all were really suffering the pain. And
Yeah.
this is my first time hearing about that.
We don't look sick. You
Oh.
can't see it. Our hair isn't falling out. We don't have patches or anything wrong. When you see us come into the ER, we don't look sick. And when you're born with an illness like this, you learn to maintain yourself. You learn to control yourself when the pain comes. You're not screaming and hollering and doing things so they don't feel like you're really sick. So if you're not going in crying and hollering, they don't think you're sick.
So it's just viewed as drug-seeking behaviors?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's very unfortunate, especially now, Adrian, like you stated, you're going to be 60. What has it been like for you? And it's not a lot of years. It's a blessing. It's a blessing amount of years is what you have.
I am happy to even be able to say that. It's been a roller coaster because just when you think you're going up the track, you have a crisis and you come right back down. And it's like you're starting your life all over.
It's very upsetting to have your child and the people that you love treated like criminals when they're there to be treated for their health condition. And also, I'm just going to speak plainly. It really is upsetting because more people you're not going to find any Caucasian people with sickle cell disease, that many. It's mostly Black people. So when they're being treated this way, it's like our kids are the people with the problem. And they're African American, and it's like we're being accused of drug seeking, and it is unacceptable. Unfortunately, the heroin epidemic is not colorblind, but as you know, we're seeing more people of Caucasian descent right now who are indulging in this behavior, but it isn't colorblind. So I'm not trying to act like anybody can have an opioid issue, but the people who are coming in to get treated for their health condition should not be accused of, drug seeking. And, the doctors shouldn't be in that situation either because they're having so many problems because they're being scrutinized as well when they give out opioid medication. So that's a problem.
Yes. And that has been a problem. And that is a discrepancy that has been a problem ever since back in the 80s when there was the whole crack epidemic, and we were being arrested and put in jail, and they were having those 3 strikes out. And now with the opioid crisis, and now that there's, like you said, people of the Caucasian persuasion who have become addicted, now there's been so much backing and so much effort has gone into substance abuse treatment.
Yes.
As opposed,
it's a disease now.
Now it's a disease.
First it's a crime. It's a disease.
And people are looked upon now as being victims of this rather than before. But thank you all so very much for enlightening us. And I hope that the audience has been enlightened as well. And Adrian, thank you so much for coming on, and continue to do the good work that you do with your particular service that you're doing to the community. And thank you, Jasmine, and we continue to pray for you. Yes. And as you continue to matriculate, and we know that you're going to become, what are you trying to become, a doctor or a scientist or what?
A doctor.
Biochemist?
A doctor, hematologist. Okay.
All right, well, I'm sure that you will do very well in that field. But thank you all
and
again.
Pam, you invited to her party. We're going to throw her a party when she graduates in May.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Well, that was very enlightening, Vanetta. I don't know about you, but I learned a lot. I learned
a lot. I wasn't foolish enough to think that they're being cured, but I didn't feel like I heard a lot about sickle cell recently.
Right. I don't hear a lot of people even talking about it anymore. And you're
No.
right. When I was in college, I knew other people,
Yeah.
more people who had it. And maybe, and this is what is awful, but maybe it's unfortunate, but maybe a lot of people weren't living as long. You know, maybe that's,
Right.
you know, I don't know.
Or
At least
I
the
don't know if
people
the
that I
numbers
knew.
are, you know what I hear more about far as affecting communities of color is lupus. I really
Yeah.
kind of almost viewed it as maybe the replacement.
Yeah, I don't know, but I certainly learned a lot about that. What I didn't realize was the whole piece about the opioid, and how they are associating people with
Really?
that, you know, with being just addicts. And really they do have, or they're suffering from the effects of the crisis from sickle cell.
Yeah, I knew nothing about that.
Yeah.
That was extremely surprising. I mean, can you imagine being in pain and you're treated as if you're a criminal?
Right. Or, you know, some type of drug addict or whatever. But I just think it's important for us to do shows like this where we enlighten people, where we learn and we educate ourselves as well as others. So it's important. I hope people learn from this, you know, and if
Yeah.
they have any questions or concerns, they need to look for their local places like the Kindred Spirits
Right.
organization that can give more information. But thank you all so much again for joining us for another episode of Public Opinion. And we will see you next time. Make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel and follow us on Public Opinion Show on Facebook. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.